Our third in a series of advice shows for the incoming Trump administration. We've done Syrian strategy and education school choice with experts in both areas. Today, another expert. Today's recommendation, the Labor Secretary should get a promotion and the Labor Department needs an upgrade. That's on Business Talk with Jim Campbell. Gary MacDougal has been Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Mark Controls, a partner at McKinsey, and he was a member of the Commission on Workforce Quality and Labor Force Efficiency in the Reagan Administration. Recent op-ed piece that I found very compelling. The Labor Secretary needs a promotion. Calling him the Workforce Secretary would help bring the anachronistic department into the 21st century. Welcome, Gary. How are you this morning?
Well, just fine. Good to talk with you.
And always good to talk somebody from my hometown of Chicago. All right, can you tell us initially what is the current mission of the Department of Labor and what you envision?
Well, the mission currently is very much a mixed bag. They have OSHA, they have the job training programs, they have miscellaneous activities that regulate business. And to me, that is something that traces back to when labor was a big deal. Right now, labor unionized workforce is only 6.7% of the total workforce, and the mission is dated and it needs to be updated. So one of the ways to do this is to think about the workforce, which includes the other 93% of the folks that are out there working, and how do you help make that healthier and stronger?
There's been a fundamental mismatch of jobs and skills. It's an ongoing problem in the country. It's one that you tackle in sort of giving the Labor Department folks a new mission.
Yeah, the McKinsey Global Institute has done a lot of work on this, and one of the things they did is interview 2,000 employers and found that they're having trouble getting people to fill jobs to the tune of 3 million jobs.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about these jobs is often they don't require a four-year college degree. In fact, just some amount of training beyond high school.
And go ahead, sorry.
But anyway, getting the folks who need jobs lined up with the needs that these employers have should be the primary focus of the department, and therefore calling it the Workforce Department instead of the Labor Department makes all kinds of sense. So what needs to be done? Well, there's a community college role here. There's a geographic mismatch. There are things that can be done about that. And this is something that the new secretary should focus on, and this would really make a difference in terms of the quality of life of many of the folks who voted for Trump and the economy.
I find very interesting, too, this falls right in line with President Trump's focus on job creation, and you had some interesting stats. About 50% of that 3 million gap fit into that area you call, skilled trades that don't need that, but only 10% of these folks are getting associate's degrees from community colleges. Talk a little bit about community colleges, and I was interested that you talked Chicago has decided to specialize and sort of put niches in different community colleges.
Yeah, Chicago doesn't do everything well, but this is something that Mayor Emanuel has done well. Typically, community colleges have been sort of training people in a general way for the workforce. What he's done is identified the employers that need people and connected them with the community colleges and had each community college specialize. For example, culinary arts is working closely with Marriott and Hyatt. There are other the hospitals working on medical technicians, and these are things that don't require college degrees. They require some training though. Before the people are ready to be employed. And this is something that should spread, and this is something that the Workforce Department, formerly the Labor Department, could focus on and take the lead.
Government's often viewed as silos. In this sort of integrated workforce department plan, would you see linkages with the Commerce Department or policy with the National Economic Council with the Goldman Sachs president going there? How would you see the government putting this together?
Well, Trump needs to designate somebody as sort of the lead on various areas. And on the workforce area, the Secretary of Labor, whom I would suggest be called the Workforce Secretary, could get the lead on this, because he would need, or it's in this case it's Anthony Posner, would need the cooperation and support of other departments. And if you're looking at the workforce, you need to deal with education. So you need to have the Education Secretary on board. And there are ways to put together task forces in the government that bring the various pieces together. In addition, there needs to be cooperation at the state level and also at the city level. I've already been in touch with 2 states on this. In the state of Maine, for example, the unemployed folks are up in the northern part of Maine, and the employers in the southern part of Maine are short workers. Well, what can be done? Well, maybe there's some ways to connect unemployment insurance with move incentive and facilitate people moving from the north to the south. Governor Kasich's point person on workforce issues has contacted me. He's got unemployed people in southern Ohio and folks, employers in northern Ohio who need workers. So you combine this with a community college, and you've got a way to really make a difference in people's lives and have President Trump fulfill his campaign promise.
I found that relocating jobs idea one of the most creative parts of this, that either small loan or in lieu of unemployment benefits to incentivize folks to move, because it really flows along with a mismatch of jobs in education, but mismatch of jobs in geography. And I know that part of Maine is incredibly depressed, the example you gave. Another interesting idea was that, LinkedIn is highly effective for professional trades, but there might be a LinkedIn kind of thing for the folks that you're talking about in these skilled trades.
Yeah. I see the government as a facilitator, not as somebody who takes over, but who's a facilitator. And to take LinkedIn and broaden it to this other level of post-high school, pre-college trained folks makes a lot of sense, because why not take advantage of the Internet? Because this is a mismatch. It's a job of connecting people. And if there's anything that connects people any better than the Internet, I don't know what it is. So this needs to be jump-started, and this is something, again, the Secretary of Labor, hopefully the Workforce Secretary, could really do something here. But it has to be done by persuasion, by leadership, and people have to know that the President is behind him.
Exactly. The Workforce Secretary has to be empowered. Let's look at the other equation now. Are there places that you would see where regulations, the regulatory burden coming out of there? There's OSHA, something that I hadn't heard of, the wage and hour division. But is there a chance there for cuts there or efficiencies?
There really should be. The whole wage and hour thing, I know when I was a CEO, I had 5,000 employees, and here's the government warming up on the sidelines, trying to tell me to put my younger managers on the time clock and pay them overtime. That was insulting to start with to the manager, and not something that was needed, and clearly something was dreamed up by somebody who's never managed anything. And one of the exciting things about the new Labor Secretary designate, Anthony Posner, is he's had meaningful management jobs. He's managed tens of thousands of people. He knows how these things work. And so here's a whole area of the Labor Department that has people doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. Another one is OSHA. There was a time when factories needed to have somebody looking over their shoulder, but that is long since gone. Having a safe factory is part of what a CEO does to create the kind of environment that avoids turnover and makes people loyal to the company. So that can be cut way back. My son runs a company in Michigan, and the OSHA guy found that his business was between the OSHA fellow's office and the golf course. And on Friday afternoon, he always got a visit from OSHA. They have long since run out of productive things to do, and while they shouldn't be eliminated, they certainly can be cut back, the priorities reestablished.
We're talking with the former CEO of Mark Controls, a partner of McKinsey. He's had a lot of work related to workforce quality, including in the Reagan Administration. All right, I want to talk about Mr. Puzder for a sec. He's the current CEO of CKE, which is the holding company of Hardee's and Carl's. He has an image as being very anti-labor, against minimum wage increase, that all that does is force them to go to automation. Talk about that. Is he the right guy?
He's absolutely the right guy. You know, in the Bush 41 administration, I was slated to be the Secretary of Labor.
Interesting.
I was in all the newspapers and so forth. And in the course of going through the process of vetting there, and by the way, it came right up to the end, but Bob Dole happened to be the majority leader in the Senate, and his wife wanted the job, and the president wasn't getting along all that well with Bob Dole, and they made a peace offering, which involved his wife getting the Secretary of Labor job. Wow. Anyway, the bottom line is that having somebody who understands business is more important than having somebody who's close to labor. Labor should not be ignored. That's 6.7% of the jobs that are union jobs, but it's no longer a department that carries out labor's wish list and makes sure that organized labor is sitting at the cabinet table. A CEO is somebody who really understands what's right and what's not right, what's needed and what's not needed. So cutting back regulation, which is another part of Trump's promises, is something he will understand. What is needed regulation and what is regulation that slows the growth of business.
We're talking with the former CEO of Mark Controls, a partner of McKinsey's, had a lot of work related to workforce quality, including in the Reagan Administration. You're listening to Business Talk with Jim Campbell. Let me ask this while we're on folks that understand the real world. Has Obamacare been a real burden on small business and the types of business, for instance, that Puzder would have been involved in? Or is the threat of it going away scary?
Well, there's nothing more complicated and messed up than the medical world in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I think it's high risk for anybody, no matter how well-intentioned, to try to fix it. As a former McKinsey partner, we would tackle anything. That is something that is daunting. And so the risk of change, having some bumps in the road, is very, very high. And I think the Republicans are right to be cautious about it. But the need for change is absolutely unarguable. And it is hurting business. It's hurting individuals. The war stories are legend. There is absolutely no doubt that it's not a question of a few adjustments. It's a question of a wholesale rethinking of it, where the individuals have choice, where businesses have choice, where the costs can be brought down by competition. And I think the Republicans have the core of the ideas of what needs to be done, but they're right to take the time to do it effectively.
All right. You're calling for a wholesale change in the mission and the culture of the Labor Department. Have you tried to get through to the Trump transition? Have you got any sense that there's a realistic audience for your recommendations?
There's been a lot of attention given to this article. I've received emails. People can look me up on the internet and my website and Wikipedia and so forth. And I'm getting more. I've written a number of articles for the Journal and for the New York Times and Washington Post. And this one's got more attention than any of them. And
that's how I came to you.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I'm not, running up and down the sidelines, raising my hand to work with Trump. But I think that this information is in the transition. My article has been talked about at the transition, I'm told. And I'd be willing to help in any way I can, but the main thing is to get the ball rolling. Just something like this requires a number of other people joining up, and it requires some momentum. I have every reason to believe there is some momentum building on it. We'll see.
I want to finish up the last couple of minutes. I grew up in Illinois, so it's kind of sad from my perspective out here that it looks like a failed state almost. Crime out of control on the south and west side of Chicago, and budget and debt problems. You had a big role in reforming the human services system, $10 billion system. Is Illinois a failed state, or do you see any chance of turning things around?
I'm working on it. That's another one of my interests, and I know the people, of course. I used to be chairman of the Republican Party in Illinois, and I was chairman of the governor's task force, where we reduced the welfare rolls from 650,000 to less than 50,000. That's one thing Illinois has done well. But the financial situation is perilous. The pension situation is suffocating, and Illinois is ranked number 50 out of 50 states. Connecticut being closely.
Yes, we deal with that all the time here. You're right.
But there is hope. The labor, Madigan being the Speaker of the House,
yes,
sort of the principal culprit here.
Yes,
Nexus is showing some signs of weakening. They don't have the veto-proof minority. They don't have a majority anymore. Little people gradually are peeling away. I think that the grip is loosening. We're lucky to have a Republican governor who is very strong and committed to changing things. So I think there's hope, but it's still very, very tough.
It's interesting. By coincidence, I talked to my dad yesterday, and we were talking about this, and the one name he mentioned as kind of the devil was Madigan. Yeah.
Well, Madigan, there have been a lot written, actually a documentary done by the Illinois Policy Institute on Madigan, and the Manhattan Institute had an article called Madiganistan about Illinois. So people are beginning to realize where the problem is. And I could go on and on about this, but change is due. It's got to happen. You might have seen a journal piece, I guess it was yesterday, the day before, about how Kentucky just became a right-to-work state. So now Illinois is isolated.
Yeah.
Missouri's about ready to go there as the only one that is not right-to-work.
And I didn't know that, yeah.
Yes, and employers are leaving. People are leaving. They're voting with their feet. I think this will bring change, but it's going to be painful, and it's not easy.
A couple of final seconds. Is Mayor Emanuel or the city going to be able to get control of the South Side? The crime there and the murder rate is unbelievable.
That's a really tough one. Arnie Duncan, who's kind of a hero basketball player, ran the school system and did some good things when he was there. There are Democrats that see this, and I think Rahm Emanuel is also a Democrat that sees what the needed change is. And Arnie Duncan's devoting his next segment of his career, having been education secretary, to working on the violence issue on the South Side. It's a tough one, though. The gangs are fighting among themselves,
yeah.
and I have a fellow who's well plugged into public housing there who brings me up to date on that. In my book, Make a Difference, I talk about the South Side of Chicago, and this is a real tough one. But I do think it's getting enough focus now that positive change is possible, but I'm not guaranteeing anything.
Well, I have to say I find it very impressive that you're using your post-corporate career to do so much good on the public sector side, and I really hope this workforce secretary gets some traction. We've been talking with Gary MacDougal. That op-ed piece, again, is The Labor Secretary Needs a Promotion, the December 29th issue of the Journal. You can get it through your iPad or the Wall Street Journal. You've been listening to Business Talk with Jim Campbell.
Actually,
thanks.
Just December 30th.
December 30th. Okay, thanks, Gary.
Okay, thank you. I enjoyed our talk.
I really enjoyed it, too, and maybe I'll come see your place at the Lake Point Tower.
Well, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome.